welcome everyone. We are, it's July, and we are interpreting the theme of home. It's being interpreted in 223 other chapters around the world. Our Kansas City chapter picked it, and Allison Carrick Williams actually created the accompanying illustration. You are in for a treat this morning because I am here at Meda's house in her front patio interviewing her, and we're going to learn a little bit more about you. Thank you for coming in front of the camera behind the print screen.
I know this is out of my comfort zone, but you all have been great so far. So
we appreciate you. One of the things that I am curious about, Meda, as I learned a little bit more about you, was the fact that you were a military brat, and so you moved around a lot. How has your idea or your feeling of home evolved through those experiences?
Well, you learned early on to adapt very quickly, because you never know if you're going to even be, never mind the same neighborhood, but maybe not even the same country from year to year. And myself and everybody I knew who was in the military, it made us a little bit more independent. You had to make friends quickly. It was a fact of life. So, and I think it made you a little stronger. And as you got older, you took those skills. And when you had to go off to college and then leave college, I felt like we were all a little bit more prepared.
A little bit more prepared. I'm curious to learn the story of how 360, you helped found it in 2009, and you've been a journalist your entire life.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I actually went to journalism school, got a degree, and told my parents, I got their money's worth, I think. I always wanted to be a journalist. I wasn't a great writer, but I liked the artistic side. Although I've been a sports writer, I've been a copy editor, I've done everything. I started out at small papers, which is a great experience in small towns. I encourage everybody to do that. You learn a lot about yourself and the world, no matter where you are. And I've moved around all over, just like I did when I was a military brat. So you kind of get used to those things. So,
and how did 360 come to life?
I had worked at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I was a newspaper employee for years and years and years. And there was a lot of layoffs, and the industry has changed, sadly, for newspapers. I still love it. But I left, and a gentleman who'd also worked at the Star-Telegram wanted to start this monthly magazine. I was a little iffy on it, but I do like a challenge. And after taking 4 glorious months off as a vacation, I decided why not? So we started, it was the middle of a recession. I figure if you can do that, you can do anything. So, and here we are, it's 2021.
2021. Do you have any reflections over the last 16 months? Has anything sort of popped up for you?
I would say it was the biggest challenge of my life when we realized things were changing a lot, and it was scary, and we sat in the office, and you can't really plan for what we did, and I kind of felt sorry for myself. I was like, woe is me, but then I realized there are a lot of people, I'm healthy, we can figure this out, we can do this. And professionally, I would look at other journalists and they're having to figure it out. Their lives are not stopping. So it just becomes that. You figure it out. You do it. So.
Yeah. A lot of people are feeling overwhelmed and uncertainty. And even us in this space, I'd really love to see you face to face, to be able to hug you and give you high fives for those that aren't huggers. So this is also a challenge when there is this dualistic, this invisible space that you're also, even in meetings maybe. Do you have any insight for us, or what do you feel about that?
Our whole credo was what makes the other person feel comfortable, whether we, because we had to look at it and if we do an interview, I would much prefer to do it face to face as well. I'm not good on the phone. Zoom, I had vowed never to do a Zoom meeting in my life. Sadly, I've had to break that vow. But I would do this. I'd go sit on somebody's front porch at a distance. Yeah. I had one woman, we talked through the screen of her home, and I was doing a garden story. I said, this works. I'll walk around the garden, you sit inside and we talk. So it's, you kind of just make it work. And like I said, I do miss it still works. Yeah, face to face for me better. But it's
Yeah.
always option. What do people feel comfortable with? So
Right, right. So I just remembered you're a professional interviewer. I'm not, and I'm interviewing you.
No, and like I said, I don't consider myself a great writer, but I do like to talk to people. So I consider my stories to be more conversations with people, and I think that puts them to ease as well. I know I'm uncomfortable being on the other side of that, obviously.
Yeah.
So if you just sit down and talk to people, whether it's about, I've talked to very wealthy people and people who are under, severe stress. We talked to a chaplain at a hospital. We went to photograph her right when the pandemic started. And, you just kind of, and sometimes it's very brief, so it sounds superficial to say you get to know them, but you do try to dig in a little bit, even if we're just going to have a 20-minute conversation.
Like we're doing here.
Yes. You want to leave and go, I sort of know them. So if I see them again, I hope they remember me. So, yeah.
One of the things I'm super interested in that I'm personally curious about, Meda, is your culture, your background. Tell us more about that, especially how it sort of intertwines with Fort Worth now.
Well, my mother's Japanese and my father was part Native American. He's from the Midwest. And I guess growing up there, we were around, it wasn't an all white community. I've never lived in that kind of situation because of the military. So I don't want to say I'm colorblind because that sounds ridiculous, but it's just, it's never something I've looked at. It's like, oh, you're different than me. It's like, I would be thrown into classrooms with people who are very different from me, but in the military, that's kind of what you do and see. Mm-hmm. So, I think as I got older, I'm more aware of it, and sometimes not in a good way because ugly things have happened, and that's been sad, and I realize that can happen anywhere. So small town, I still think of Fort Worth as kind of a small town, and that's happened to me here, and that kind of surprised me. So you
grew up in Missouri and you've been here 40 years. Do you call Fort Worth home?
Yes, it's a long time. Once you say that, once you live in a place longer than where you grew up, I figure that becomes your home. So my intent wasn't to live here that long, but I don't think any of us planned that. I like it here. It still has a small town feel. There's a lot of pluses. I know all of us think, especially in the summer, why do we live where it's 1,000 degrees and, we should be near mountains and ocean. But then again, in December, it could be 75 degrees and we're sitting out here. So that's a big plus.
Yeah. One of the things that our audience really looks for in these kinds of talks is what they call nourishment, sort of food for their soul when they're traveling a path that feels hard. So if someone hasn't found their home in their career or in their skill, based on your, decades of experience and everything you've been through, what would you say to someone who's asking or looking for that?
I would say, and sometimes it's hard to even make new friends, especially when you get to be my age or a certain age. And, but you have to, you have to look for that, and it might be a coworker, and that person might lead you to somebody. I've also learned, don't judge yourself against what you see. I think that drags a lot of us down. In my job, I am around, I go into very beautiful homes and I come home and get a little bummed out and well, I really need to paint this wall and these, but I've learned not to do that. So anymore, I was just I appreciate what they have. So I think the self-appreciation, I know that sounds kind of trite, but I don't care if you live in, 400 square feet or 4,000. Mm-hmm. It's, you make it your own, you're comfortable, and I'm a little bit of an introvert, but I still will find ways to talk to people. And, if you need to get out, especially with what's happened, my neighborhood has become sort of that grounding. I think a lot of us got to know each other because we were sitting in our front yards more and not sitting inside watching television or whatever. So, the go outside credo, it doesn't mean you have to go hiking. It means just go outside. So,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. And actually, I've seen some of your neighbors go, we cannot pass by without saying,
Yes,
without the puppy
yes,
saying hi.
yes. And that's been, that was a big plus of COVID, is getting to know, neighbors I'd mainly get to know their dogs more than them, but still, it's like I saw people I never had seen before, and, it felt good. And I sort of miss that. I think that's one of the things we all miss about that time. Are we going to go back into our houses again and shut the door and not say hello? So
that's a really good point. So of these experiences, in addition to going outside, is there something that you can reflect on that changed because of the past 16 months, the pandemic, that you're going to bring into the future?
I think that definitely is one, to, get to know my neighbors a little bit better. I mean, we depended upon each other for, it might be a food runner. I have a neighbor who works really long hours for a delivery company that will go nameless, but its owner flew into space the other day, and she works really long hours. And, I always want to make sure she had something to eat when she got home, or, if like we were all doing so much takeout, it's like, what can I get you? And that shouldn't stop now. My other neighbor just had a baby, and I want to make sure you're like, oh, I know your husband's back at work, feel free to call me if you can't call him. So that can never stop. It's like the lessons of 9/11, we all were going to do those things, and then we didn't. We're going to be kinder and gentler, and this time around, it's like, it can't stop. We have to do that. So
We have to keep connecting, taking care of each other, going outside.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to take some questions from the audience. So if you have questions for Meda, please pop them into the chat. I'm going to be taking a look at them. And before I do that, let me actually go ahead and send a shout out to our global partners. We want to say thank you to MailChimp, who is Creative Mornings' official global partner for marketing. They have a fresh fund where they are excited to offer $50,000 for the new generation of Black business founders. And Brian's putting that in the chat so that you can apply. Applications opened in July, and share it with your friends. We are also thanking our global partner Skillshare for our global partner for online learning. They are an online learning community helping millions of us take our first step on our creative journey. Thank you to our global partners. So I'm going to be popping into here looking for questions for you, Meda. But one of the things that is in our creative manifesto is that everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. For someone that hasn't found their creative, because it sounded when you started to tell the story that you were in a couple of different jobs before you could call yourself, like, identify as a journalist. Tell us more about that process for you.
Well, I think obviously you do that when you're young, but I found, it really doesn't matter how old you are, to start. If you feel like you're not doing what you love, it's probably out there. I urge a lot of people, and I know time is scarce, but to volunteer. It's one of the best ways to maybe find out what you love. It might not lead to a career, but it's I look at kind of as a side gig. Work drives me crazy, but my volunteer work makes me feel, it kind of, fills a little bit of a void. And then you'd be surprised at the people you meet when you volunteer. So I look at that as another connection. I do volunteer for the Humane Society of North Texas, and I've met an amazing array of people. And we all, we wear the same T-shirt and pants when we're on. So we don't know, you don't judge. You don't know what these people do. But then you find out, you're, this high-powered real estate person. You're a medical person, you're a nurse, and yet you're doing this for animals. And so that's been, I always say I pick those women, they're mainly women, those who I would want on my team come the apocalypse or anything else, because I've seen what they do, their empathy, their care, And you kind of, it's a whole nother group that you can find and learn things from. So yeah, so shout out to all my animal rescue friends.
Yay.
So they do a good job.
So you're encouraging us to have a side gig, volunteer.
Yes.
Just find something that is meaningful to you, that's important to you, where you feel like you're giving back.
Yes. And like I said, I think you will meet, other people, well, you might not meet them another way, whether it's, a dinner party or anything. Sometimes if you volunteer at a community garden, it's a whole different, parameter that you're doing things. And, I like kind of seeing people out of their elements, and some barriers come down, on how you meet people that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally going to take advantage of that segue, because Creative Mornings is an all volunteer. We are the hands and hearts of Fort Worth. Creative Mornings is volunteer. And we are looking for a photographer. If you're out there and you're a photographer and you'd like to volunteer, everyone behind the camera here, Charlie, Tyler, myself, we're all volunteer. And I actually do this because it's, I was a military brat. And when you're new to a space, especially as you get older, it's hard to meet people and find people who have open hearts and open eyes. And this community across the world, 223 chapters, it's really instilled a culture of something like that, where you're open-hearted. So thank you for volunteering for the Humane Society, for promoting volunteerism, for just being cool. Let's see what questions we have from the audience. Okay, so this is from Jessica. And as you're asking the questions, if you tell me where you're tuning in from, that'd be wonderful.
Brian says Christina has the first question. If you want to go back.
Oh, Christina asked perfect. Thank you so much. Christina asked the first question, and she's actually tuning in from Fort Worth. What was your favorite home interview experience?
For the magazine, I have to flip back through my Rolodex of a mind real quickly. Well, one of them, and I think most people know Lou Lambert as a local chef, restaurateur. He built an incredibly unique house on the Trinity River. Lou was very kind enough to let us come in and see. And he built this house totally for him. He doesn't care about resale or, and I love people that, they're not thinking, well, when I get rid of this in a few years, it's like, no, this is how I want to live. And I like that. So, I think everybody should do that, not go, well, I'm never going to paint my walls this color because I might have to sell it. It's like, do it if that's your home. That was one of my, that was an amazing house. So, I appreciate Lou for letting us look at it. Some of the houses have been, the people who've done restoration is always, because I just know how much work that is. We just did a home over here in Fort Worth that was, could have been a tear down, had been around, a lot of history in it. And the gentleman that bought it said, no, this house needs to live on. It's part of Fort Worth's history. That's always really impressive. Plus you go through it and you're like, you see the before pictures and it's like, I'm not going to complain about the little projects I have around my house. So that makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
So, but I'm always impressed as I tell people that I'm allowed in somebody's home to look at it, to take pictures of it. I don't know if I'd do that for anybody. Yeah. So it's always, it's very cool that people let us do that. I feel like I'm a little voyeur in somebody's life, at least for a little while. And like I said, I appreciate getting to see, not just people's taste levels, but their artistic values, the things they love, family objects that they've kept. It's fun. So
nice. So Christy asks, what gets your creative juices flowing, and where do you find inspiration?
Oh, that's a good question, because I do, I've had some low points this year where I've done this a long time, and sometimes you're like, okay, it's Groundhog Day. I just feel like I'm doing the same thing, So I have a group of friends who are not in this business, and they let me whine and kind of complain and cry. And then they kind of look at me and they're like, what are you doing? You have the greatest job that we know. We pushed a pencil. We had to work with slide rules. You get to do interesting stuff. So I think about, you're right. I'm not, I do have a very interesting job. So sometimes you just have to look at it. I could be, doing this, and I'm not. So, so that helps a lot. Sometimes if you all work in the same profession, it's not the best group hug, because journalists especially, we all like to complain and whine to each other, just nature of the business. So you have to kind of break that circle and find other people that go, no, you really have an interesting job, and they're right. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I love how that also builds connection and community.
yes.
So that you can have a different perspective.
Yes. I've learned about, said you worked at Lockheed for that many years. That must have been, you were like building, buying expensive aircraft. I wouldn't want that responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. You put new hips in people. I don't have a life or death job like that. So yeah, that always puts you in perspective. So
yeah. I love that. I love that. Building perspective. We have a question from Rachel, who says, besides your pets and mother.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. What one item in your home would you grab if you only had a couple of minutes to evacuate?
Oh, one of those questions I should have an answer for. Well, I learned this from my grandmother in Japan, who lived through a horrendous earthquake, is I actually have a little fanny pack of essentials, because my grandmother escaped with her life, but she also had cash money. She had an extra cell phone. I know it's very practical, but I thought, okay, if my 95-year-old grandmother had the wherewithal to do that, then we should have that ready. And then it has a passport, copies of some things. So if you really needed to get out of your house real quickly, you have that. So, I'll thank grandmother for that. It's not very sexy or exciting, but
What was grandmother's name?
Grandma Kishigami.
Grandma Kishigami.
Yes. I have to remember her first name. So.
Do you have a special memory of her?
No, I think I met her twice in my life.
Yeah.
So, but when she talked about I saw the earthquake damage and what she had to do, and she kind of she wore the fanny pack all the time after that. Yeah. And so I said, oh, that makes sense. So, she was a Boy Scout and the Be Ready credo, long before I think she even realized it. So. Yeah.
Coming from a military background, we have what's called a go bag.
That's exactly what that was. So, yes, always be prepared.
I'm just going to be a little vulnerable with the audience. It's a little difficult for me to see the chat, so I'm a little slow. And I'm going to show you my eye. Oh. I was bit by a bee. That's why I'm looking like this with my sunglasses on. It's because I don't want you to have to see what I look like for real. So this question is from Larry and Laura from Duo Designs. What they want to know is, what do the best homes have in common? And is there a certain quality or item to them?
Well, the ones we look at we're looking for a story, kind of from the homeowner, why did they pick that house? What drew them, whether it's an old home, newer homes are little, but usually there's something in there that once a homeowner gives us a tour, they're like, this is what we loved about the place. It could be, that the bathroom has a lot of natural light, or a lot of people, it's, the amenities are all, houses are amazing these days, but it's usually, what attracts the homeowner, what's going to keep them in there. Why do they call it a home? So
that is beautiful. So I have to segue here to Your home.
Okay.
Why do you call it a home? What drew you to it?
Well, my house turns 100 years old this year.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, she's an old lady. She got some new windows as a very expensive birthday gift. But I always liked old houses. They're a lot of work. There's a lot of money that goes into them. But I feel like I'm living with somebody's history where I might not have created my own. This house, I know the man who built it. He built it for his wife. His name was Valentine. There's a little butler's bell still embedded in the wood floor. Even though I can't imagine the size house they had a butler, but apparently that's what it was.
Wow.
There was a former musician's ex-wife who lived in this house at one point. So I figured, at some point he probably had, rock stars were over here having parties. So I like to think that way. And so I always thought, things have gone on in this house. They're not ghosts. I don't really believe in ghosts, but there's auras in there that I think, okay, now I can make my own. But that's kind of what I love about, old houses. And I think when you buy a new house, start to create your own right there. If it's not your forever house, some people will hide something in, under the floorboard or whatever, but it's like, hopefully whoever lives there 50 years after you do says, I wonder who lived here. I think that's why when people want to sell their house, they're always interested in who buys it. Will you take care of it? I'm entrusting you with this property that I've loved. Will you love it too? So.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Jessica is asking, during stressful deadline weeks, how do you stay sane?
Oh, I don't. I'm sure I look very tired. I've actually been up since about 2 a.m. today. I'm actually have learned, I'm a very type A personality, but I'm able to, kind of take a walk the dogs. I'll take a nap if I need to. I realize stresses, everybody has it. So, and I do like to say everybody should handle it in their own way, but and I also know it's only going to last this long. So, everybody should have to be on a deadline at some point because it makes you a better, stronger person. But, and like I said, I'll call a friend who doesn't live here and just say, I know they're up late. I am too. Just kind of talk me off the ledge for a minute. I'll watch bad horror movies. That's an outlet for me. I hate to say. I'll cook at 2 a.m. It's just, you find just ways just to kind of break your routine.
I love how aware you are of what brings you back to sanity.
Yes.
I mean, it's very clear, like you have all these outlets.
Well, that's key. I think you just can't, there are times when, I can't go into work real frustrated because that doesn't help anybody. I mean, I have a reputation for being kind of tightly wound anyway, but I'm actually fairly calm inside. And it's like, I'll just let it go another way. So, and it just helps, clean do a load of laundry. And if it's mundane, I'll come out and, talk to the birds at night. And so.
Catherine's asking, what did the yard at your house look like when you moved in?
It was a lot of turf grass, which Texans seem to love. I don't, because I don't like to mow. Mowing is not gardening. That's my tattoo I have somewhere. So my goal was to make less grass in our backyard, which I know a lot of people have seen because that's the only place I ever go. I also have dogs that's not really compatible with a beautiful green lawn. So a lot of the work was done to say, okay, I'm not going to deal with muddy paws. Again, I don't want to deal with grass. I have plants and that actually is a stress reliever. So, to get rid of grass, put in flowers, put in herbs. I like things. I don't have a lot of time to have a beautiful manicured garden, so it's going to look a little more wild. But no, that's a very soothing situation, meant to hang out in the garden. So everybody should do that. So
take Meda's advice. Pull up some of the grass. I agree with you so much.
Yes.
So we have we have a funny comment in the chat from Edit. It says, "Will you bring tacos when you come back to the office?"
Flour or corn?
Be specific,
Yes.
Edit. They're loving your tips of survival. They're sharing that they have go bags too. This is from New Orleans training. And Brian actually wants a butler bell. That's what he's
Yes, yes. I want the butler though. Yes. I can ring the bell all day long. Nothing happens.
Catherine is asking, what did Meda love about her house? What was the thing that made her buy it?
Probably this rock chimney. I don't know if you can see it behind me.
I was actually adoring it from here.
I lived in this neighborhood and would walk by this house and I love this chimney.
Yeah.
And I was hoping it looked like that on the inside. Now it didn't, sadly, but the outside and the fact that it did have a front porch. You know, I am a front porch sitter, but yeah, it was definitely the rock chimney. And I can also tell people to find my house, you know, that's how you find it. So
it is a beautiful chimney.
Yes.
It's a very beautiful chimney. So we have gotten to the end of our audience questions. Is there any advice or guidance that you want to share with the audience of creatives in Fort Worth?
Well, I know, you know, the topic was home, which, you know, my colleagues were like, oh, are you just going to talk about your house? I'm like, no, because it is what it is. But I think, you know, again, our houses or apartments or wherever you live, you know, they have become so important to us. I'm a horrible vacationer. I don't take a lot of vacationers because I'm not very good at it. But so my house is, even though it's not the most beautiful or well appointed inside, it's my getaway. You know, there was a lot of people joking, well, I've moved to the living room or I've moved to the den. That's my big move inside the house. But that's kind of true for me, you know. That's one reason I do a lot in the backyard, because I enjoy being at my house. That really wasn't a hardship for me to stay at home. You know, people are like, oh, I hate it. I said, why? You should, you know, that's what you're going to embrace. You know, and I know people who lived in New York in small apartments with no view. That had to be a lot tougher. We're very fortunate here to be able, like, I have space, I have a yard I can walk out to. But it's, you know, it's, if you have that, take advantage of it. It's, you know, like I said, home is, it's near and dear to me, and it's my safe place. You know, it's my, it's where it literally is, where my heart is, and you know, I'm happy here. So
I love that. I love that. Make ourselves happy at home.
Yes.
Ganelle just wants to share.
Friends.
Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
Meda, you have an amazing home. It's a great place to be. Meda, I know that it's deadline week and you're typically behind the screen, not in front of it. So I honestly want to thank you for sharing part of you, part of your time, and sharing a part of your home and your stories with us and the entire Creative Mornings community and the world. You're a hero in Fort Worth because you've created something that has a lasting legacy. And it took a lot of courage to do that. So for folks out there who want to have something like that, to say that I helped make something or create something, what would you have to offer us as advice or guidance in that space?
Well, you know, what I do is very public, and, you know, part of me, I feel fortunate in that I have gotten to know so many people. My big focus at the magazine was to support local, and that's, you know, community, whether it's retail, charities, whatever. That's just, that's part of who I am. That's part of what the magazine does. But I think, you know, whatever you do, that's what you should embrace too. I always tell people, if you only, what you're missing if you only order online is making a relationship with that person who runs a bakery. So the next time you might need an emergency birthday cake, if you get to know those people, they're gonna step up for you too. Those are the biggest relationships that you can build in your communities, getting to know these smaller business owners, at least on a first name basis. And so when you go in, address them by their name, say hello. We have a 7-Eleven up here on the corner. It's like a odd little place where people meet, and but you get to know them. I feel comfortable going in there, and I'd say that with every small business around here. It's they're not my close friends, but I'd call them friends, definitely.
Yeah.
So.
Fort Worth is definitely a town with a small business heart.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things I do like about this place. So, I know in big cities there's small pockets of that, but here, we have to spread out a little bit and do that. So, but everybody has that, and it's a neat thing about Fort Worth.
Thank you. Catherine says 360. Oh, corn and flour. Sorry, it's both.
Oh, okay.
And. Don't make it a choose.
Yes.
360 West has become a big part of the community. Love the local focus. Thank you. Our final question is, how does 360 West define home, like the area covered by the editorial content?
Well, the name came from, we had to kind of pick a geographical area. And so I think a marketing company did help us with this, but it's really roughly designed as west of 360, the highway. I didn't think that sounded very poetic. So I look at it as like it's a compass, it's you have a 360 view, mainly west of the area. So that's not to say we don't ever branch out of that area. I mean, we do go to Dallas, we go, Granbury, Point South. I mean, there's really no, geographical line we won't cross. But I think just for, you have to kind of put a little bit of a defining area to figure out what you're doing, and for really to be practical mailing purposes and things like that.
Yeah.
To be really honest. Yes, yeah. There's a real practical part of that too. So.
Yeah. So is there anything about home that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, I know a lot of people thought I was going to talk about the homes I covered, and really I thought that was it as well. And I think we touched on that a little bit. But I think, what we're seeing now, the phenomenon of the really expensive home is kind of making us all, this is not the community we thought we were going to live in. I get a little sad. I think one of the big challenges for us is, how do we make affordable housing? Are people going to be able to say, I have a home, and a lot of people, I don't think they ever are. I see young people and it's like, I bought my first house when I was pretty young. I know people are like, I'm never going to be able to buy a home in my life. And I find that kind of sad.
Yeah.
That's a true possibility in light of our economics. But then again, I'm like, don't define home by that. You might have to figure it out. It's like my mother living with me, and I'd be real clear, she moved in with me, not vice versa. But, I think there is, it's a trend, or not a trend, but it's a norm in many countries that, you do live with your family, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'd actually like to see, I call it communal living in a different way. If you don't have a spouse, we always see those stories like, oh, we started a neighborhood and we're all going to live together and take care of each other. I think that's what we have to do. That's what the home's going to become, not so much defined as the four walls and the roof, but who's there with you? How are you supporting other people, and making them comfortable, whether it's 10 friends who decide to live together, or when you're 70, somebody can do the cooking and somebody can do the cleaning, or whether you take your parents in, or a friend who's lost a job, that needs to become their home too. So that's kind of, I don't mean to be a downer about that, but it's something we have to look at. So
that's true. I what's hit my heart, what I love about what you've pulled out through this entire talk, Meda, is stepping out of our comfort zones to connect with other people and to build our community, and how significant and important that is throughout our whole lives. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I kind of hope that my kids will take me intergenerational too and let me live with them.
Yes, yes.
Just a heads up, guys, in case you're listening.
Yes. That's one question people are like, how's it living with your mother? And it's not for everybody. It's 95% good, but no, it was a challenge. I was an only child. We didn't live with each other. I mean, once I got out of high school, I never lived with my parents. And all of a sudden, you're going to live with me? How does that work? But I will say, all the rooms in your house have doors. Learn how to use them. You learn to set boundaries in your home, which I do feel like is great training for later. If you have to, whether you have kids or, everybody needs to figure out if you're living in close quarters, how that works. And I think, again, the pandemic, people realize, okay, I'm either equipped to do that or I'm not. So, home became not so great a place for many when they're stuck there every day with 3 kids and nobody's going to work and nobody's going to school. And, that was an interesting challenge. I'm thankful I didn't really have that situation, but it's, that's something to look at. So,
thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your time during deadline week.
Well, thank you. So for making this fairly easy.
And I want to thank our partners, JO and 4/3 Creative, all of our volunteers, both here in person, behind the screen, and behind the scenes. And I'd love for you to save the date for our next event with Brooke Blankenship on August 27th. Until then, follow Meda's advice. Go outside and build your community. Make it a home.
Thanks, guys.